Glad to be with you on this Tuesday morning, the 12th of November, 2024. Election day now a week in the rearview mirror, and most of the results are decided. Got a few House races that are still hanging out there. Richard Cross and Lance Talbert. This is the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk, Mississippi, and we are joined now by our friend Henry Barbour, GOP strategist and delegate to the RNC. He's been in politics for a long time. Good morning, Henry.
Good morning. Hey, Richard. How are you, man?
Doing well. Always appreciate your time. You know, we look at this political system, and it's like there are multiple parts to it, but two specific parts. One, it's the election process. You got to get through campaigns, and you got to win. And then if you win, if you are fortunate enough to be elected, then you've got to govern. And that's kind of the phase that we are transitioning into now, where Republicans have the White House, the Senate, and the House. Those majorities pretty good in the Senate, plus 6 seats there. Going to be slim in the House. This story out of the Senate is really fascinating to me, with the secret vote for the new majority leader. John Cornyn, John Thune, Rick Scott seem to be the three names that are out there. It's happening by secret ballot. There are a lot of people that think there should be more transparency in this, that we ought to know who our senators are voting for and why they're voting for them. What do you make of this, getting this done quickly and doing it in secret?
Well, I don't have a problem with a secret ballot. I think people ought to be able to vote their conscience the same as at the ballot box when we vote. So I don't have an issue with that at all. And in fact, I think it's the right way to go about it. I think people ought to be able to, the members of the Republican caucus ought to be able to vote for whoever they want to, and not feel whatever pressure on them to publicly say who they are, who they aren't voting for. That's the way it's been, and I mean, just like I say, I think it's the right way to go about it. As far as the timing.
But hold on, let me ask you before we move on from that, though. Shouldn't our elected senators be responsible to the people who elected them by saying, okay, this is who I voted for, and this is why I voted for this person?
You can argue that. I don't necessarily agree with that. I will say I served on the RNC for a long time. And we had secret ballots, and it's the same concept. And when you run for majority leader, when you run for, say, chairman of the Republican National Committee, it's a little bit like running, for class president in high school. And a secret ballot just frees people up, I think, to be able to vote their conscience and not have a lot of pressure on them. What we elect people to do is to get the job done and get the right people in position to lead. That's what we do. That's what we hope. We want to get results. And so I think if Roger Wicker and Cindy Hyde-Smith and any other senators of the Republican persuasion will vote for who they think are going to be to best work with the Senate caucus, for the Senate to be effective, to be able to work with the House, to be able to work with the White House. That's what we want. At the end of the day, politics is about getting results. It is, good policy. My uncle likes to say is good politics. And that's really what we want. And the reality is, one reason that Kamala Harris lost and that Joe Biden was really unpopular was they didn't get results. They didn't really deliver on what they said they were going to do in 2020. And I think that's a contrast in many ways to what Donald Trump did when he got elected in 2016 and went into office. And so, with Trump coming in January, with a Republican House, almost certainly it's not 100%, but it's very, very likely, and a Republican Senate. These 2 years are pivotal. And, so I think that's what this is about. Political parties have one job, that's to win elections. But elected officials, once you've won, your job is to take care of the needs of the people. And the needs of the people haven't been kept very well the last 4 years. And that's why Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, lost across the country. I mean, Donald Trump outperformed his 2020 results everywhere. He outperformed with whites. He outperformed with blacks. He outperformed with Hispanics and with Asian Americans. He outperformed with young people. He outperformed with the older people, urban, rural. It up and down
across the
board.
And
again,
yeah,
Richard,
you're right.
It comes back to why should we elect or re-elect Kamala Harris? And it was a matter of results, and particularly that relate to people's being able to make a living and pay for their groceries, pay for their fuel. And so at the end of the day, that's the scorecard that matters. What results do we get for the people? And anyway, so I hope that Roger Wicker and Cindy Hyde-Smith will vote for who they think will best run the Senate to get those kind of results for the people of America.
All right, so let me ask you this. Visiting with Henry Barbour, GOP strategist, been around politics and at both the national and state level for a long time. Politics takes sometimes adversaries and makes interesting bedfellows, right? So you got Marco Rubio running against Donald Trump in a primary, and they say nasty things about each other, and it's kind of ugly on a debate stage. But we get to the point where Donald Trump, it appears, is going to appoint Marco Rubio to be Secretary of State, which is, the third highest position in the land. John Cornyn and John Thune have both, in the past, been critical of Donald Trump. Is this a similar scenario where those type leaders in the Senate who have not necessarily been supportive or as supportive of him or have said negative things about him now set those things aside and say, okay, he's the guy that the people of the United States elected. We're going to work with him on his agenda. Or is it a deal where it's like, we might be smarter than him anyway, and we're still going to kind of do things our way?
Look, I think no matter who the Republicans elect as Speaker, which I think we all know that's going to be Mike Johnson, or Senate Majority Leader, they're all going to seek to work with the White House. But it's a Senate vote, and the Senate is its own body, and Donald Trump or anybody else over going to be at the White House, they've got their job to run the executive branch. The Senate's got its job to run the Senate. But all three of them are going to look to the White House for leadership, and they're going to look for ways to be able to work with them. And it starts out with making sure that President Trump's appointees, if it is Marco Rubio in the Senate and whoever else, get approved by the Senate. It moves quickly. So again, we can get to the job of running government and getting things done. Let's get focused on the economy, inflation, the border, making people more secure, whether it's from an international perspective or whether it's from a local perspective.
So, Henry, to me, that brings up an interesting, really interesting thing is that Donald Trump's got to make these appointments, and he's got to go appoint people that he thinks are going to be best for those positions, whether you're talking about Homeland Security or, border security or Secretary of State, whatever it is. All of those entities. And sometimes those people are people that are currently in Congress, whether in the Senate or the House. But if you pluck those people from the Senate or from the House, now you're taking people that are on your side out of there. And in a case of like Elise Stefanik, you're going to let a Democrat governor in New York appoint her replacement, right? So what's the fine line between, I'm going to pull some people out of the House and the Senate versus, am I not right there?
No, only in the Senate does the governor appoint. You'll have a special election if Elise Stefanik is appointed to be the UN ambassador for President Trump. They'll have a special election in New York, and it'll happen in pretty fast time. So you're talking about an election in, say, February, March, April kind of time frame for Elise Stefanik's seat. So you do not have a Democrat governor appointing.
Okay.
That's only if it's a senator. That's the only way that happens.
And so Donald Trump would take that into account when if he says, hey, Marco Rubio, he knows that DeSantis is going to appoint another Republican and there's not an issue there.
That's right. And obviously you hope in a seat like Elise Stefanik's that, we can hold that seat.
Right.
So that's critical. That's for sure.
Quick timeout, a couple of more minutes with Henry Barbour, longtime GOP strategist. He's been a part of the RNC. He's worked in state politics, national politics as well. We're back with you. This is the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Sit tight. We're coming right back. We appreciate all your messages on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. If you want to be a part of the conversation, a few more minutes with Henry Barbour, always kind with his time to talk to us about what he sees going on in Washington, D.C. and at the state level. Obviously, our focus right now is a little more on national politics. If we could get to a couple of things here, recess appointments and the importance of that, Henry, as we make this transition. We know that in the first Donald Trump administration, there was a holdup on a number of those appointments going into his first term as president, and kind of made for a little bit of a clunky start and not able to get a lot done. There has been everything that we've seen kind of leading up, or I guess since the election in the last few days, has been about trying to hit the ground running in this second term for him as president. Talk to us about the recess appointment process and why that matters so much.
Well, basically, a recess appointment is when you can't get the votes in the Senate. You still appoint somebody and they're to act during that term. But I'm not expecting that to be much of a thing here as we get started. I think that we, as you have mentioned at the top of the hour, Republicans have got a bit of room to play with their margin in the Senate. So we shouldn't have trouble being able to get people approved by the Senate. So I expect that President Trump's going to name people. They're going to get to the Senate, and we're going to be able to be off to the races and be able to get things done. This first 2 years are really critical, I think, to get good public policy passed while Republicans, do have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. Hey, can I want to mention something that I think is really important for your listeners, particularly in the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. There's going to be a runoff for the Mississippi Supreme Court in the Central District, which runs up in the Delta, goes through Metro Jackson over to Lauderdale, Meridian area. And the race is between Jennifer Branning, a conservative, and Jim Kitchens, who is the most liberal member of the Mississippi Supreme Court, and who also started his political career about the same time as Joe Biden. But if conservatives don't vote on that Tuesday before the Thanksgiving or vote absentee, they run the risk of letting liberal justices take over our Mississippi Supreme Court. On the coast, an appointee by Phil Bryant, Don Beam, lost her seat on the coast. So the court can shift in this election. And so it's really important that people are aware. And certainly my encouragement would be for conservatives in central Mississippi to vote for Jennifer Branning, a constitutional conservative, somebody without a political agenda who will read the Constitution as it was intended to be. And I just think it's important and wanted to mention it And Richard, if I might, Mississippi has lost, the Mississippi Republican Party particularly has lost a real leader in the last few days. Jeannie Lucky from Ocean Springs, who was the Republican National Committee woman on the RNC going back to 2010. She was appointed by Henry Barbour back then. She also served on the college board, was an Ole Miss alum, just a great lady, and a real leader. And I just wanted to acknowledge what a special person she is, a real inspiration to many, and just the sweetest person, Jeannie Lucky.
Appreciate you doing that, Henry. Certainly sad there, and our thoughts go to her family and her friends, and she's got a bunch of them all across the state of Mississippi. Your point about Jennifer Branning is she got a higher percentage of votes than Kitchings did in the election, but goes to a runoff because nobody got 50% of the vote, and the timing is not great on that. We talked yesterday about the fact that a year from now that actually gets moved back another week, but with it being Thanksgiving week, you got a lot of people traveling, a lot of people doing other things. Take advantage of the absentee process if you think you might not be able to get to the polls on that particular day. Certainly a big deal, and probably, I mean, this is one where it's simply going to be it's going to be based on turnout, right? I mean, whoever of those two candidates can get their voters out, they are going to win that election.
That's right. And this central district kind of leans Democrat slightly. And so it's a little bit uphill for conservatives, but very winnable. And I think particularly because I think Democrats are a little bit deflated right now. So we got an opportunity, but it's a pivotal seat in the balance of the court.
We're out of time, Henry. I hope we can visit again soon. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Richard.